I'm the head of community at Gatekeeper, and largely that that involves me creating vast amounts of content to help people with their digital procurement journey, whether it's contract management, vendor onboarding, things like that. But before that, I was a procurement and contract management practitioner. So I was working at a fintech in London, and before that, working across the defense space, doing procurement, contract management consultancy. And over those years, one constant remained, which was a lack of knowledge around digital procurement, regardless of the company size that I was at, whether it was a multi-billion enterprise level type company or a smaller startup scale up. So that kind of got my brain thinking about how do we improve the state of digital procurement when everyone I'm talking to is unaware of the advantages that it can give us within our day-to-day jobs. I was almost getting rather frustrated and perplexed because we all have like phones in our pockets, right, that allow us to fundamentally run our lives on them. Yet when we get into the office, we're stuck working on spreadsheets, manual tasks, just dealing with work that really adds little value, that in our everyday personal lives, we've outsourced to apps on our phone, to technology. And I was kind of shocked, maybe back in 2015 through 17, when I was first starting out in the space, that procurement was so unloved, right, in the software space. And yeah, everyone I was speaking to, we could see the solutions out there, but no one really knew about them. So that's kind of why I started creating content in the space. And this content I found, if I'm being perfectly honest, to be terrible. It was some of the most boring, dry content I had ever laid my eyes upon. And as a 25-year-old in procurement, I was just flabbergasted, to be honest. It just felt overly corporate, and it felt like it was written as though it was in the 90s, right? Like it felt like we weren't really pushing the profession forwards. So it was crazily out of date content, regurgitated content. We're still talking about the same things over the last 30 years and just putting it into another white paper, maybe creating a webinar or podcast about it, and then sharing it like it's the best idea out there. And fundamentally, the way we all consume content has changed. I imagine most of you there use LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. You're using social media sites to consume content, and no one was really creating native content. And what I mean by that is, say you went on to LinkedIn, someone may link an article about, maybe from Gartner, not to call Gartner out, they do some good work, but they are at times overly reliant on their Magic Quadrant pay-to-play system there. But they will just simply link an article, not really give any context. But what you want to be able to do is you go onto one of these platforms and you are provided with the knowledge, whether it's a video that's built for that platform or whether it's written content that is there specifically for that platform. You're not reading an essay on social media, because when you're scrolling on your phone, and we all scroll, that's how we consume data and information now, you just simply cannot consume it. So that was a major frustration about the state of affairs of procurement content. And I guess the last point that I started to realize when I was embarking on my, let's call it my content creation journey in procurement, was that I was a little naive to how people do things in different industries. Like, I was in defense, I was also doing a lot of work with government, and it was slow and it was painful. And I knew that people were working for, like, say, software companies, maybe Google, they were working at fintechs, biotechs, and they were moving at a pace that was unknown to me. And I wanted to collate ideas and knowledge from people. So I launched a podcast, and I thought, the reason I did that was because if I'm collating this knowledge from other people, why not share it with everyone? Because that's, in my humble view, the only way we start to push this profession forwards is if we capture knowledge from practitioners and leaders in the space of all levels, not necessarily just the directors, heads of, chief procurement officers, but everyone all the way up, and we share that information. So that's a contextual element here as to why I started creating content in this space. But one thing I realized very early on was that whenever I posted about digital procurement, and I'll keep that phrase quite broad. Eloise Epstein, I know, is a speaker here. She's far more experienced, gives way better definitions, and she's probably the main person to listen to on all of this. And I would thoroughly recommend her book if no one's checked that out, and also her ecosystem diagrams. But one thing I noticed was whenever I posted about how digital procurement could fundamentally change our lives as procurement practitioners, people either loved the content or they absolutely hated it. And it was very polarizing. And I was really shocked by this. And maybe that's a level of naivety that a millennial has in the space at times. Because, like I said early on, we all use tech in our everyday lives. We're mostly glued to our phones, to our laptops. We're using tech every day, apart from procurement, mostly. And it got me thinking that I should probably focus a little bit more in on digital procurement. So I've already shared that Eloise Epstein, I think, is probably the number one person you need to follow in this space to learn more. And conferences like this that Leo is putting on, I think, wow, just incredible, just to get people in the room to talk about digital procurement and just procurement in general is fantastic. There is another person I would recommend that everyone goes and consumes their content, which is Digital Procurement World. And I appreciate that this organization has a very European-centric view. But the work that Matthias is doing, he's based in Amsterdam, to further the profession and push for digital procurement is mind-blowing. So there's some resources that I would definitely consider when you're trying to learn about digital procurement. And I don't want to underplay the content that software companies in this space put out. I'm always cautious with this because you can end up just reading a sales pitch from software companies, whether it's sourcing, vendor onboarding, contract management, supplier relationship management platforms. But largely, their content is some of the most enlightening content you can read. And you're really going to get an understanding of what is possible in this world if you're not currently experiencing it in your day-to-day work. So in terms of getting the word out about what digital procurement can do, I think it's amazing if you do consume knowledge. That's one incredible way to get knowledgeable about this, right? But there is a huge disclaimer I want to make here, is that if you don't live and breathe digital procurement, so if you're not involved with it in your day job, then I think it's super hard to really become aware of what it can truly do. And like, just one takeaway that I would always like to give to people, and I used to give it to my team and anyone that I was working with, was that if your company, or if our company at times, isn't going to invest in procurement platforms to help us do our role better, then we should certainly go somewhere else that truly values procurement and wants to invest in the technology to help us do the work. Because the way I look at this is that over the next few years, the digital procurement landscape is going to feel more familiar for most. And that if your CV doesn't have on it that you can either implement the tech, use the tech, or source the tech, I think you'll be at a massive disadvantage compared to others in the job market that can do this. So I think a good first step is consuming content in the space, then it's using it. And then I think the next layer is to start creating content in the space to outwardly show your knowledge. And I'll come on to some of the benefits of content creation, because there are financial benefits, there are really good opportunities out there. So fundamentally, my message here is that the creation of content is vital to us enhancing digital procurement competencies of procurement professionals, but it can only do so much without you actually using it, doing it every single day. And I just thought I would share some personal insights that I've had as a procurement content creator in the space. So this year alone, I've had like 1.4 million views of content on LinkedIn, something like 60,000 video views on TikTok, and like another 20, 30,000 views across my website and YouTube platforms. And when I consider the sheer enormity of that audience, it feels firstly terrifying that that many people are listening to me. But I think it should be super insightful for anyone who kind of wants to share a view that there is certainly an audience in the procurement space that you can start putting content out. And it doesn't have to be around digital procurement, but it could be about supplier relationship management or how to negotiate better with suppliers. There's that, like, so many people have amazing amounts of knowledge in our profession. And I think we don't do a good enough job at sharing that. We typically leave it to organizations such as SIPS, World Commerce and Contracting, all of the big sort of designation companies. And they too, I would say, have the same sort of issue in that they regurgitate a lot of content and don't really seek to push the profession forward. So I think us as practitioners, leaders in procurement are the ones that can really start getting those messages out just by leveraging content in the space. So just moving on here, one of the main benefits of content creation is career opportunities. And I want to be I'll be quite transparent about this. So I started creating content roughly in 2017, took it a lot more seriously in 2019, and got a bunch of consultancy work just by simply posting content onto LinkedIn initially. And I think a couple of engagements probably netted me around $250,000 in revenue as a fairly fresh procurement professional, not to mention then the connections that I made, the relationships I made with recruiters, which also landed me more roles in the future. So there is a real benefit to creating content out there because it kind of gives you a slight advantage above anyone else when you're getting interviewed or even just being offered roles without having to go through that process. In addition to that, though, these next two benefits are genuinely my favorite perks here of being a content creator in the space. It enables you to build an entire network or how I see it, a community of procurement, contract management, supply chain professionals. I'm coming to the end of this, and in short, I'm just going to quickly recap the last bit because I don't know how much came through before I realized I was.
One quick question.
Yes,
I didn't
go.
align with you, but are you able to take some questions, like one or two after you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just a quick summary, like on the whole content creation benefits. better roles, better connections in the industry. You can form your own community, which you can effectively use however you want within reason, of course. And like the last one that I didn't come to before I got disconnected there was I've actually built a lot of friendships. And I don't know about you, but like as we get a little bit older in life, it typically gets a little bit harder to make friends. So having content creation, building these communities, like I've met up with people that I met purely through, say, like LinkedIn and platforms like that. We've made really good friendships, and additionally, it's good for your career, right? Because we can bounce off one another for work in the future and things like that. Now, I was just going to give, just to finish off this sort of insight into the procurement content creation world, just like some really quick practical tips for you about how to get started creating content. Because it's actually really easy if you are up for it, in that you only need a mobile phone. It's incredibly simple. You can use anything on your phone to note down your content, whether it's Google Docs, your Notes app, things like that. And the reason I'm kind of focusing in here on writing is because written content doesn't take too long to produce, whereas video content, we all have cameras on our phone. It can be a little bit more onerous to create video content. But largely, if you've got a phone, you can make content. You can document it in your Notes app. You can record a video. And then I would simply say to focus on LinkedIn as the platform. LinkedIn as a platform at the moment, and it could change at any time, has incredible reach. And what that means is whenever you post a piece of content, you have the ability to reach hundreds, thousands, and even hundreds of thousands of people with every single post without spending any money to enhance that reach. And to be honest, like it's the only professional platform out there where you can have really good conversations, where people don't simply engage with your content by saying things like great post. You can genuinely have incredible conversations in the comments, and you can go through, learn, comment, engage, build those connections, and really, for me, with my agenda, which is pushing digital procurement, get that message out to as many people as possible. So yeah, I condensed it down a little bit because of the disconnection there, but in short, I would say becoming a content creator in the procurement space has probably been like the best decision I've made. I've learned a lot, met a lot of people, and I would highly recommend if anyone's looking to enhance their career, it's a good way to do that.